Hello and welcome to another episode of the Marvins World podcast. It is the podcast where I speak to unique and fascinating people who have a very unique perspective on things. And if you are like me, these are the people to talk to if you want to make what you love your full-time job. If you like this podcast, please support the podcast by giving us a review on iTunes, preferably positive. And also just leave some comments, share it to your friends if this is something that would interest them. Now, our guest for today is Dominic Anglim. He is a friend of mine who I met on an open mic comedy gig in the UK about four years ago in London, and he's an Irish comedian who has traveled the world. Like, he's been to Spain, the USA, he's been across the globe, and now he's in London. He's settled permanently here. And in this podcast, we talk about how he started off in Dublin and you used to bomb a lot at music gigs. There was many there. And then he moved over to New York, where New York is effectively the capital of stand-up comedy. It is the breeding ground of many of the best comics in the world. You can get maybe 10 shows a day. It's very brutal, and he talks about how that really shaped him as a comic. He talks about one of the things he doesn't like seeing in comedy shows is when people come in and they bring the notebook, because already it feels like you're disrespecting the audience and you're not giving them love and care. Like we don't deserve your full attention or love. You're reading off a notebook. He also talks about how the New York has Laughing Buddha, which is one of the biggest comedy clubs in New York in terms of open mic to the top. And they've got lots of workshops which link you to Comedy Wire, who link to various TV networks. Also, he talks about how he moved over to Spain and how he was responsible for building much of the English-based comedy gigs in Madrid. And he talks about the various differences between doing comedy in Spanish and English. And he states how Spanish comedy is a lot more slapstick than perhaps in the UK. And one interesting story about this is that you find people say if you want to learn a language, get a girlfriend from that nation. He is a prime example of that. He was in Spain for about a year and a bit, didn't know any Spanish, and then he found a Spanish woman and learned lots of Spanish. And without further ado, here is Dominic Anglim.
Hey.
How are we doing? You good?
I wasn't sure if you were coming, so I just started talking. I thought maybe it was just going to be me by myself. I just started talking. So you'll have the first beginning bit of just me waffling by myself.
Okay, that's fine. It may add a bit of spice to the podcast.
How's it going? Are you all right?
Yeah, not too bad, and keeping well, all things considering. You?
Yeah, good man. Good man. You're looking well. Jeez, what's it been like 4 years?
I think so, yeah. And I'm dressed exactly the same as when I first met you. What's it called? We were in some bar in Liverpool Street, and it was called The Water Poet.
The Water Poet. Yeah. It was downstairs, and I remember it was summer, and it was so hot.
Oh yeah, and it was a pretty difficult gig. And then what's it called? I remember it was a bit of a challenge, and I remember it was an interesting gig, and that pub is amazing.
I think it was just a packed house, and because it was so. I mean, I think we were having a heat wave in London at the time. It just kind of added to the tension in the room.
Maybe, but probably because I pretty much bombed as an MC, though. I think.
After I remember, I think you had a few drinks. So you weren't actually bombing as bad as he thought you were, but because you were drunk, you thought you were bombing.
Oh, right. That must be, yeah, probably. I don't know. It was all right, but it wasn't. It could have been. Yeah, it was an interesting one.
It's a
I love
learning
doing
curve.
comedy. I love doing
Yes.
comedy. I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean, I think doing stand up and emceeing though, they're kind of different things in a way, because I think with emceeing you gotta be there for the audience, whereas with stand up, you can just go on stage and do your jokes and then you can just get off the stage. Whereas if the audience aren't replying and you're an MC, you have to stay up there with them and be like, okay, you know. So it's
it's
harder. I think being an MC is harder.
and and it can also be. So I've been doing it for a while since we last met, and I've actually become better at that than being an act. And so
Okay.
the thing I find funny about it is that with an emceeing, you don't necessarily need material. I mean, it helps, but I mean, effectively, your job is to be like a presenter, get everyone all warmed up for the other acts,
Exactly.
and sometimes it can only take a little thing for the rest of the night. You don't really need to do much after that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the good thing about being an MC is, as you say, you don't necessarily need material. It's more about talking to the audience, and it's more about, if you could build that rapport in the initial, 10, 15 minutes before the first act comes on stage, then you can keep going back to that one thing which you had a laugh with the audience about at the beginning. And that can be
Yeah.
like a kind of a through joke.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's funny you said that because a couple of weeks ago I emceed and the first act did okay, and it wasn't quite smashing, but I found something with the audience. I don't know. I was talking about different things. I said, "What kind of things you into?" I like
Yeah.
a bit of what's it called, spring roll and chicken, and
Yeah.
like sometimes I put a bit of ketchup or like barbecue sauce.
Yeah.
And then I was going like, oh, do you do this on your chips? Oh, not that's what I was doing. I was saying, I like my chips with a bit of ketchup and mayonnaise,
Yeah.
burger sauce. And then I was saying this and that. And then I was saying it to this one lady. She says, why not a bit of salt, to one of the audience members? And then they went on and on. And I said, a bit of peri sauce and some chicken wings and this and that.
Yeah.
And then like people started laughing when I said that. And then I started going on a bit of Nando's chicken wings and all that, and then her friends were laughing, and then I asked why, and then she said, "Oh, because she's a vegetarian."
Oh, nice, nice. So she was just totally joking, like.
No, she was proper true, and it was the thing about that. It doesn't sound funny when I say it. It's one of those things you'd have to be there,
Yeah.
but once I said that bit there, the night was they're all relaxed and happy and engaged and ready to have a laugh, and I
Nice,
literally did
nice.
not need to do anything for the rest of the evening.
I mean, that's an absolute touch when that happens, I think. But I think the secret to emceeing is literally giving the audience an opportunity to express themselves. Because, what can happen with a lot of comedians is they'll go on stage and they'll just talk. They won't necessarily ask any questions in their act, which is fine, and that can be really funny as well. But if the MC doesn't ask any questions either, and the MC just goes, oh, this is an opportunity for me to do my comedy as well, then the audience can just feel like they haven't really been listened to. And they're going to give the comedians less attention.
I think one of the things that most comedians do is they start off with the strongest material, which is probably when they're emceeing, and they then do a bit of crowd, and which is probably the smarter thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, but I've noticed it goes the other way where they just do all material with the emceeing, as you said. And I
Yeah.
don't know, it doesn't feel like you're emceeing if you're doing that. You're not really hosting it.
You're not really hosting. You're not really hosting. In fact, all you're doing is you're just another comedian. And like, I don't mean that in a bad way, just another comedian, because obviously people have come out to see comedy. But I think improv is great for that, because like, when you're hosting an improv show or when you're starting off at an improv show, the compere will literally go on stage and just go, this is an improv show. We need your suggestions to make this show work. After 3, I want everyone to shout out their favorite fruit. 1, 2, 3, let me hear you. And then the audience are just kind of going like, oh, what? I'm going to shout something out here. and maybe like 3 or 4 people will shout something out, the leery people, you know, and everyone else will be quiet. And then you can build from that, and you can go on from that. And by the sixth or seventh request from the compere, all the audience is going to be shouting out, so that when the first improv game starts, the audience is like, they want to be on stage, you know. And I think that's the type of audience that you want for a comedy show as well. You want to give people, who had a shit day? Let me hear you. Me. You know, who had a fucking good day? You know what I mean? You just give them a question and you give them an opportunity to shout. And that's why people go to comedy shows. They want to let loose.
They want to be. It's like when people watch things like Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings. It's escapism.
Exactly. And they want to sit in a dark room and laugh. They don't want to be judged for what they're laughing at, you know?
No. It's funny you said that. And what do you think of being another comic, though? No. What's it? How would you say? What would you say are the things that you need to do when you're getting on stage as a comic?
As a comic, I think you got to do crowd work. Even if the MC has done crowd work, I think you got to do a little bit of crowd work as well. You know, not to the same degree. If you've had a good MC, then ideally the crowd is going to be warmed up, and you don't necessarily need to chat to them too much. But I think it's important to make it conversational. Like, do have some questions in there at the beginning, so that the audience feels like, oh, he cares about like what I think on the subject, and it's not just him going, I hate apples. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, if they think that you care, and you know, you want them to care as well, because you want to actually know what they think. Otherwise, it's kind of like you feel like you could just be doing it in a room by yourself, you know?
A funny story. I want to see if you've actually had this. I found this one comedian who would think that he was doing really well and smashing a gig.
Yeah.
But what he used to do is he used to do this. And he didn't look at the audience. And then like he would come back and say, I smashed it. But like the room would be really quiet. I noticed that, and a lot of people would leave during his set.
Oh God, delusional. Yeah, I don't know. I think comedy's a bit of a journey like that, because I definitely had years when I started off where I was so bad. You know, I was going on stage, I was super confident, but I wasn't necessarily getting a lot of laughs, you know? But I was having a great time. I was going up saying my stuff, coming off stage on cloud nine, because I'd gone on stage and said my bit, you know? But I remember I was doing an open mic. It was a music open mic, but I was doing comedy at it. And the MC of the night, he basically just turned around to me one day in a pub and just said, "Oh, sorry, man, like, you know, you can't do any more comedy on the Thursday night." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Oh, people have been complaining." I was like, complaining? He said, yeah, the people have been complaining. I was like, you know, but in a way, that's the kind of best feedback you can get, because it's like, oh, okay, you're not funny. Like, you need to put some punchlines in it. You need to make comedy. You can't just go on stage and talk. Like, that's not comedy. You know, you have to get A, some punchlines, and B, you have to pause and give the audience an opportunity to laugh. Because if you just go on stage and talk, like, you could just be standing in a bar talking to someone at a bar. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, comedy's a hard journey. I mean, so is all creative arts. I mean, I think from you yourself, like you've done a few different sort of things, haven't you? And you sort of have a journey into acting and comedy as a whole.
Absolutely. Like I started off. I studied theater first. I did computers first, but then I went in and I studied theater when I was about 20. It was supposed to be a 4-year course, but I did it for a year. I dropped out. And then I kind of went away from acting for a good few years. I worked in sales, various sales jobs. And then luckily, the company I was working for went bankrupt, and I had been teaching. And then my buddy was like, "Oh yeah, you should audition," because it was like a theater company, and they were looking for storytellers to go into schools and do like interactive theater with kids. And I was like, "Oh yeah, okay." And I hadn't been doing any theatre for years. I had done like an amateur play, but hadn't really been doing anything for a long time. But my buddy basically said to the owner of the company, he said, look, he's really confident on stage. And that kind of got me in the door with them. I messed up the audition, but then the guy saw me, or he saw a video of me or something doing like an open mic, and was like, okay, I'm going to give him a chance. And then, yeah, kind of got in there. I was working then in theatre then. I did that for like 7 years. And it was really, really cool. I learned so much about stage, being funny on stage, physical comedy, like without even talking, you know. But yeah, I think, I did love being on stage as an actor, but I think I was always going to progress to doing kind of film stuff and things like that, because that was kind of where my passion lay from when I was a kid. You know, I always wanted to go into film acting and into filmmaking as well. And the comedy thing, I started doing stand up in 2010. And I sucked at it. I really, really sucked at it for about 2 or 3 years. Like, I was terrible. And then I went to the States. I went to New York in 2013, I think it was. 2012, I was in New York. And I just did loads of stand-up when I was there. And I bombed a lot. But I really started to learn why I was bombing. And like, I was really starting to realize how to bomb good, like how I could bomb but still get laughs. And that was, it was a massive learning. Especially like places like the Pit in New York, where, you know, you wait for like 3 hours for 2 minutes of stage time. So imagine like you're sitting there for 3 hours, and then at the very end you get 2 minutes and you go on stage. You can't go on stage and tell a long story in 2 minutes, because the audience has got to be laughing within the first 30 seconds. Otherwise, you've lost them, you know? And it was just a massive learning curve. And when I got back from the States, that was when I decided to start putting on my own nights and start hosting. And actually, hosting really kind of made me as a comic, you know? It gave me the experience on stage, and it gave me the confidence to bomb. You know, it gave me the confidence to bomb, and to bomb in style. So, you know, you don't get any laughs, but that's okay. You just talk to the audience. And then by talking to the audience, you start to get laughs, because you're engaging them. And the more the audience listens to, the more likely they are to laugh at your material, because you've built rapport with them, you know? So, yeah, it was a massive learning curve. And I was really lucky in Madrid, because I knew people, because I had been on the open mic scene for a few years before, being terrible at comedy, but being a kind of a constant on the scene. I kind of got to know some people who had bars and stuff, and started putting on my own nights. And I think one of the first open mics I put on, I somehow managed to get this nightclub that held like 300 people. And you know, having been in New York, I was like, oh yeah, I'll charge comedians, you know, €5 to perform, because that's what they were doing in New York. I put out the call, and like nobody came. I think 5 people came, and they were all friends. And there was no one else there. There was a staff of like 12 people working in the nightclub. There was 5 people there, you know, and that was the first and last time that I, you know, hosted in that venue.
So yeah, well, they still do that now. I mean, it's never. I think even after COVID, New York and LA being the hotspots they are, and
Yeah.
America being, you know, the UK, there is a bit of sort of sensibilities and a bit of hold back on certain forms of exploitation. But in America, there is no to and fro. There's no in between. It is 100% capitalist.
Yeah, and I think as well in New York, like, because it's kind of like the mecca of comedy, New York, and then of course if you go all the way over to California, there is comedy in between, but these are kind of, you know, these are like the kind of the main areas that people want to perform. So they really start to charge. I'm sure people could do it in London as well, and probably get people performing. The good thing about charging is that I suppose that you do get a bit of a filter for the performers that you're going to get up. But yeah, like it's it's London kind of reminds me of New York in that, you know, what I love about London is, you know, you can go out and do comedy 7 nights a week if you want. You know, if you can find the venues and you can get the, I suppose you got to get in with people as well. There is options, you know, for 7 nights a week to go out and do comedy. Like that's exciting. As a comedian, that's exciting. You know, even if it's just an open mic somewhere where there's like 2 people in the audience, you're still getting your stage time, you know?
Yeah, that is, I mean, the thing though with London, one good thing is they run a lot of bringer gigs,
Yeah.
but none of them are really paid to play per se.
Yeah.
There's none. They
None.
got rid of that. It's
When did they get rid of it?
no, there was one with, now this is a sad story, but
Was it
Lions
your
Den Comedy Club.
was that your night?
No, I don't charge. But not yet.
Not yet, exactly. Why not?
No. What's it called? He died, and then the
Oh,
people
right.
that took over decided to make it free. So that's
Okay.
that's the story. So,
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah. So like as an MC, so what? Like later, I mean, I MC'd for a good few years, and later when I was MCing, we started to kind of like put the filter up about who was going to perform. So we started offering coaching. So if people wanted to do comedy, we were like, okay, yeah, cool, but we'll hear your set first, and we'll give you some feedback on it and help you improve it, so that by the time they got on stage, you know, their set was a bit more polished, and therefore, you know, we brought the value of the night up, so we could charge in, and people were willing to pay because, you know, they knew that the quality of comedy was going to be that bit higher rather than just an open mic. It was people who had been coached and people who had been, you know, and through that we started to build a scene in Madrid, and it took years. I mean, now the comedy scene in Madrid is really good. There's a lot of English language comedy nights on, but like in 2013, there was no open mics for comedy. It was all music, and there just wasn't that many people who wanted to do comedy, strangely enough. But
no, I'm not.
yeah, there just wasn't that many people doing comedy. There were comedians, there were comedy nights, but they were closed. They weren't open, you know. There was a group called Freshly Comedy, and they're not running anymore. But they were the kind of like English language comedy group in Madrid, and they had a show that they did every week, improv and stand up. But it was them, and they were a closed team. You know, it wasn't an open mic. So yeah, so that I think that kind of like protected their show, I guess. But it also didn't really feed the community. It wasn't really creating a community of performers. I remember I was hosting a night around the end of 2013, and there was a guy in the audience, an American guy called Ben Serio, an actor from New York. And he was in the audience, and he came up to me after the show, and he was like, "Oh, I'm thinking of starting this improv group in Madrid, and we're looking for improvisers, and maybe you can come along and stuff." Because I had done a bit of improv in the show, and he started a group called Mad Improv. He started that in January 2014, and that really was the kind of the beginning of a bigger community of performers, and that's still going. You know, they still do nights and they still do classes, and I think it's great. It's great when it's great when nights kind of foster support and are willing to give people stage time and are willing to coach people, because that's when you're going to get a really kind of healthy scene. You know, London is massive and it's got so many nights, but there's also so many classes. Like there's so many comedy clubs that do classes as well, and that kind of feeds the industry and keeps it thriving, I think, you know.
Yeah, but it's also so it also depends on who runs the course and where it's from, because there is
So
one particular comedy course that is a bit iffy, and I
really,
will not mention who on
don't
here.
mention it. Probably better off not to mention it. But it's good to know that there is an iffy one out there, I guess.
But most, I think a lot of them, if you go in for a select purpose, aren't too bad. Like Logan Mo, I'll just tell you the good ones.
Logan Murray is great. I did a course with Logan Murray in 2014, a comedy writing course, and it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, he's incredible, and it was funny because I served him at Starbucks, and I said, "Are you Logan Mo?" And he said, "Why?"
Nice.
And then I said this and that, and then he gave me some tips, and then he just said, "Take care."
Yeah, no, he's a great guy, great teacher as well. And his books, I mean, How to Be a Great Stand-Up, pretty much a Bible for me for a good few years on how to write jokes and just how to be a better stand-up comedian, you know.
Well, I don't know how long it must have taken for him to understand it to that in-depth a level. And he's played a massive part probably in improving many of the stand-ups we see today. If it wasn't for
Definitely,
him, the stand-up
definitely.
wouldn't be what it is now.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. I know a lot of people that have done courses with him and are great comedians on the back of it, you know. Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think I mean, it's great. It's great when you have really good teachers. I think Angel Comedy, I think they do some good courses as well, right?
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I can't recommend them enough. They're very good. They also do a writing gym regularly as well.
Very cool.
But it's a great club. And then there's loads of great courses in the UK. And one thing that I found very, very interesting is I think I noticed that in Comedy Buddha, they had a few writing gyms and courses, but like the prices of all of them are like catastrophically like double what you see
Yeah,
in the places in London.
yeah. So, are you talking about the Buddha Comedy out in New York?
Yeah,
Yeah, so Buddha Comedy, I mean, they're a great institution as well. I think his name is James Lawrence or Jeff. No, Jeff Lawrence. Jeff Lawrence. So he runs a lot of free comedy workshops as well, though. So you can go in and you can do some free things. Like I did some free comedy workshops with him. So they also offered like promo codes to join up with Comedy Wire. Are you familiar with Comedy Wire?
not precisely, no.
So Comedy Wire is it's like a social media platform for comedians in the US, and it's an online platform where comedians can write jokes about social things that are happening. So they put up comedy competitions, they put up various photos, news items, and then they just say, oh, you know, like write your best one line on this, and people write jokes on it. And when that website started, only way you could get in would be if you had attended comedy courses under these particular schools, and they put up like a promo code. You could say that you had attended a Buddha comedy course. And that's how I got onto it. You know, that's how I started writing for it. I think it was around 2015. And the cool thing about writing for them is that they then are in contact like with like the Late Show, NBC, and they're in contact with a lot of commercials and stuff like that are looking for comedy writers. So they're constantly putting up things where you can get paid writing work, which is a really cool, really cool tool. So yeah, I know what you mean. Like I guess they are priced quite high, but then again, yeah, the quality of what you're getting, I suppose,
Yeah, I
is quite
suppose.
good as well. You know, like they're industry standard, they're at industry level, you know, and they have the connections as well to connect you with bookers and stuff like that for like maybe the Gotham Comedy Club and places like that, or Broadway Comedy Club, you know, which are all very well established clubs in New York, you know.
Have you performed on any of them on the
I
property?
have. I have. Yeah, I was very lucky. I got to perform. I performed in the basement of Gotham Comedy Club a few times. So they have the open mic downstairs, and then upstairs is for the industry professionals. So I've performed in the basement a good few times. I performed in the pit, which was like baptism of fire. Like I pretty much, I feel like I became a better comedian performing in the pit. Broadway Comedy Club, I performed there a good few times. That's a pay-to-play place. So yeah, you pay $5 and the room is full of comedians. So it's a very difficult audience, you know, very difficult because everyone's looking at their notes. No one's actually paying attention, you know.
Yeah, they really don't care. They're so bloody yeah, but the New Yorkers, they're just so cold and brutal anyway.
They are, but you know, I was really expecting to get heckled and stuff out there, and I think I got heckled. I think I've been heckled more in London than I have in New York. You know, in New York, they're just not even paying attention to you. Like they're just they're in their own world, looking at their notes. They always say if you can make comedians laugh, you're doing well, because you know a comedian's just thinking about their own stuff, about their own set. You know, they're not really paying attention to yours. So you can engage with comedians and you're doing well.
One thing I do want to say is I want to ask you 3 questions. So one of the questions is, how did they react to your Irish accent? Because every time I went over to the States, they were mesmerized by my English accent, and I was called an Asian Hugh Grant. And two, yeah, how did you find it sort of being in Spain and New York? And also one other question is, how does the Spanish and English comedy scenes coagulate together in Madrid?
So yeah, so when I went to New York initially, as I said, I bombed a lot. I mean, I was there for 6 weeks. The first 3 weeks, I'd say I just bombed nearly every night, and I was doing comedy like 7 nights a week, and sometimes I was doing comedy like twice a night, and I was just bombing, like constantly bombing. And I was like, do I need to change my material? I started writing a lot of one-liners then, because they're all about the one-liners and less about stories. And I was always a storyteller, you know?
Yeah.
But the accent thing was good. I mean, it was good in that they're definitely interested, because they're like, oh, this is a different accent, you know, this is interesting. But then, you know, you got to bring the funny with that as well. You can be interesting to a degree, but if you're not hitting them with a one-liner straight away, they're just going to lose interest. So yeah, as I say, I started writing one-liners over there, which really helped me to kind of, you know, get them on board and start getting laughs earlier on in my set, which then helped if I wanted to tell a story. I just knew I had to tell a much shorter story and basically get to the punchline quicker, you know. And to answer your second question about comedy in Madrid and doing comedy in English, by the way, I did comedy in Spanish when I was out in New York as well. Because there was a lot, you know, there are a lot of Spanish speakers in New York. In fact, the area I was living in Brooklyn, nobody spoke English. Everyone spoke Spanish. It was a Dominican Republic area, and everyone was from Dominican Republic, and no one spoke English. So that was kind of cool, you know. It was just going around speaking Spanish, and I was able to get like really cheap fruit and veg when I spoke Spanish. I got like 50% off compared to when I spoke English. It's a good thing to know about.
So they were like, oh, you're one of us.
Yeah, they just like, I mean, immediatamente, they were just like, oh, this guy speaks Spanish, like this is the price. Whereas if you're speaking English, you pay like twice. It's just really funny, I think. But yeah, in Madrid, I think there's a really good comedy scene in Madrid, Spanish comedy scene, like the likes of Jorge Segura. He runs a night in Vallecas, Pueblo de Vallecas, which is like a kind of a little village on the outskirts of Madrid, really famous. And he runs an open night there. He also runs like the Madrid Comedy Club. They've got nights on in Madrid Center as well. And so there's a lot of brilliant Spanish comedians who kind of just like keep the whole comedy scene going, you know. Fernando as well from Sevilla, a friend of mine's husband. And yeah, there's just loads of really, really good Spanish comics. So the crossover between the English comedy scene and the Spanish comedy scene it almost was inevitable. But at the same time, it did take a little bit of time for Spanish audiences to start going to English comedy nights. And I think as well for English speakers to start going to Spanish comedy nights. But it did happen. And now you do get a lot of Spanish comedians performing in English. and English-speaking comedians performing in Spanish, you know? And so there's a good crossover there now. There's a lot of bilingual comedy events that happen as well. Like in Teatro de los Aguas, there's a great comedy night there as well. It's run by a New York comic. So yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff going on there in Madrid at the moment, and the crossover has happened. I think initially it was slow to begin with, but these things take time, and then over the years it just kind of got bigger and bigger, you know. And if you go to Madrid now, like there's just a lot. There's a lot going on between improv, between English comedy nights, and between Spanish and improv comedy nights. Yeah.
So I want to ask you with the technical question. So when you're writing a joke in English and when you're performing on the like an English and a Spanish show, how do you adjust an English joke for a Spanish audience?
Make it more visual, put more actions into it. Like Spanish humor is very visual. It's slapstick. They love slapstick comedy. So if you want to make something funnier for a Spanish audience, put something visual in there. You know, a physical action behind what you're saying is going to get a much bigger laugh than just talking. With no, you know, someone standing on a mic like this is never going to be as funny as someone who's like behind the mic doing all the actions, you know? Like they absolutely love the actions. And I think all audiences do actually. It's definitely something that I apply to when I'm doing comedy for any audience is to put actions in.
Why does it work? Why would you say you need to move more of a Spanish audience to perhaps an English one?
I think it's just their type of humor. Like if you look at a lot of the Spanish TV shows and a lot of the Spanish comedians, they have a lot of physicality to their acts. So I think it's just the culture, you know. It's just the type of humor that's existed in Spain, and that's why it's, you know, it's needed. In my opinion, anyway. I mean, of course, there are comedians that don't do it, and they're very funny as well, you know.
But the structure, but one thing that's hard, I find interesting about languages is, like, it's not only do you have to know the words in that language, you have to understand the way it works, the structure of it. And so when you're telling a joke, I don't know, if you're telling, I don't know, a ridiculous joke, knock joke, who's there? Or what kill, I like eggs because they're excellent. How would you deliver that in Spanish? And how would you have to alter the words and the structure and the way you deliver it?
Well, I mean, you'd have to change the pun for a start, because I mean, for that example, for example, eggs are huevos. So huevo. So you'd have to get a pun with huevo, you know? I mean, what pun could you have with huevo? Huevo.
Quaver.
But it would have to be a Spanish pun. Do you know?
Quidditch.
Yeah, in English, fine. But if you're talking about a Spanish audience, you'd have to get a Spanish word, which also meant, do you know what I mean? Like, to get the pun, like in Spanish, you know? But yeah, I don't know, like they really appreciate when you go to the effort of doing something. Like I had a Spanish bit that I used to do about having a dog and being in a park with my dog. And you know, when I got the dog first, you know, my Spanish was so bad, but when I got the dog first, I wanted to call the dog Pepino. Pepino means cucumber, right? Okay. And but it turns out it's also slang for something else in Spanish, right? So anyway, I was like, oh, Pepino. But I like when they shorten the words. When they shorten the words, it's like it would be Pepinito, which would be a little cucumber, right? Now I'll just leave that to your imagination. I don't think we need to say what it is, but it was slang anyway. It was slang for something, right? And I didn't know that. And so, but luckily, like right before we were naming my dog, you know, my girlfriend at the time, she was like, I don't like this name. Let's go with a different name. So I was like, all right then. So we went with a different name. We ended up by calling her Madra, which was a Gaelic word, which just means dog. So we called our dog Dog. But I was imagining the scene, you know, of being in a park and being like, Pepinito, Pepinito, Beneki, Pepinito, aquí, and like you know, like just all these like men just looking over, and you know that for them that's funny because you got the slang of the Pepinito. It's like it's a funny thing for them to have someone in a park shouting out Pepinito, because in Spanish Pepinito is a slang for something else. So for me just to shout out that word in a park, calling my dog, that's funny to them because they've taken this word which has an alternative meaning, and that's funny for them. Now for you and I'm just shouting out a Spanish word. It's not funny. And even if I was standing in a park going, little cucumber, come here, little cucumber, even that's not funny because we're just like, oh, little cucumber, okay, a little cucumber. But for them, it is funny because it's slang.
Okay, so let me write this down. And what? So, Pepinito.
Pepinito or Pepino.
Pepino. Now,
Pepino means cucumber. I don't know if you've gathered what it's slang for, but
yes, I understood.
Good,
slightly.
good. We don't need to say it. But let's keep it PG. Let's keep it PG.
If you're not from Spain or Madrid or stuff like that,
yeah,
what advice would you give to someone that's like trying to do a gig in Spanish and trying to, like, if they don't know the language and they need to understand the culture and they want to get themselves?
I would definitely, I would take a set that you're really comfortable with in English and speak with a Spanish person and get it translated properly, you know, to the way people actually speak. You know, get it translated properly, and then once you have it translated, work out ways that you can put actions into it. Work out ways that you can do impressions or do some sort of physicality with it, and that will you know, that will aid you massively for when you go to do it. And then when you do want to go do it, you know, just talk to me and I'll definitely be able to connect you with some Spanish places that you can perform in, you know.
One thing you may not think of, but one thing I thought that might be quite interesting in some of these gigs. If you don't know the language, first of all, and you go up and you just go ahead and do it and go on stage, I'm not going to try it in Spain, but I want to yeah, it's something I want to try out because I'm sure if you do comedy in a language you don't know, there's going to be funny bits in it, no matter what. Like you're going to stumble on things.
There could be. I mean, Eddie Izzard did stand-up comedy in Spanish. You know, he did a set in Spanish. He did take out notes on stage, which was, I mean, I didn't think that was funny, but you know, the audience, I don't know, it was funny. I mean, it was funny in that he was making an effort to do it in Spanish. But it would have been funnier if it was just him doing comedy in English, I think, you know. But I mean, fair play to him. His stuff that he does in French is brilliant, you know. And I'm sure he just was like, hey, I want to do it in Spanish as well, you know. And it was funny and people did laugh and stuff. It was good, like. But I think for the Spanish, they were just kind of going, well, this is really basic Spanish. You know, we want to, you know, we want to hear something more advanced, or I don't know. That was just my opinion, but I mean, it was pretty successful. So,
I would, yeah, it is an interesting thing with him. He is a remarkable man, but yeah,
man, yeah, definitely.
I know there must be loads of comedians doing comedy in different languages, but it's not really advertised that much, and I don't see it that often where comedians do it in languages, and I want to see.
Yeah, I think it's a really good idea to give it a go in another language. Like, it's fun. It's definitely fun. If you can get it down where you're not making any grammatical mistakes. I think that's good because then the audience, they're really gonna like appreciate like that you made the effort. And then on top of that, if you can be funny, it's like, yeah, you know, this is good, this is decent, like, you know. And Eddie Izzard did that. Like he had a really good set, and it was funny. And I think when he took notes out, I think it was a joke. It was like, oh, I need to look at my notes, but I think it was a joke. He was playing up to the thing of like when people take out notes on stage, you know, which is not funny, but it was funny when he did it, you know, because it was like.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think when the comedian takes notes on stage, I feel that it's a bit of a disrespect to the room straight away.
Yeah, I just really gets under my skin, and I just think it's like, you know, if someone, and I've been at so many nights, and when I used to host nights, I used to always say to the comics, just learn your set off by heart, just learn it off by heart, because that's, for me, that's comedy. Like if you go on stage and you forget your stuff, that's what happens. You forgot your bit, and then you just get off. And when you get off stage, you're like, oh, I forgot that whole bit. But that's live comedy. Like when you go on stage, if someone goes on stage and they take out their phone, just go home. Like, I don't want to see your phone on stage. The audience doesn't want to see it either, you know? You do get people laughing and stuff, but I don't know. I feel like they're laughing out of kind of like embarrassment for the comedian. Like, it's like, why did you even go on stage if you had to take your notes with you? You're not ready. If you have your notes, you're not ready, you know?
You know what? Yeah, I think that's true. I think because it's already you're disrespecting the audience the most. Like, are we not good enough for you to do your best stuff? And if you go in there, I think maybe also what would be funnier if you forgot your stuff.
That is funnier. And that's what always happens. People do forget their stuff all the time, and they have to wing it. They have to improvise, and they do something, and the stuff they improvise is not funny. And then they're like, in their head, they're like, damn it, I had this whole bit. But they can't show that to the audience. The audience, you know, the only thing that they can show to the audience, in my opinion, is the act. That's what you should be showing your audience, is your act. You know, I mean, it's such a difficult subject to talk about, because I think there's a lot of comedians who go on stage with a notebook and put it on a stool and go, okay, and they'll just start reading, and then they'll be like, okay, this is another little bit. And I know that a lot of comedians do that, and they think it's fully acceptable, but I don't know. I just don't. I just disagree with it.
It's a funny thing, yes. And one thing I noticed in a lot of comedians. So I had a gig a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things for the night, and maybe you do it as well.
Yeah.
He didn't necessarily do that well with the emceeing thing, and like the thing I'm finding it difficult is sometimes it's difficult to give feedback and tell them what they're doing wrong because people don't always take well to it.
Of course.
So what I'm going to do for the next gig, next time I see him, is I'll speak to him after the gig and tell him what he did wrong for the gig before. So it's easy. If I tell him before, he may get tense or a bit stressed. But so simple things he did was when he's talking to someone on stage and he's emceeing, the times he's done well, there was live the audience up for it. But you're not always going to get that. Sometimes you're going to get people that are a bit timid.
Yeah, definitely.
How to engage with them.
Yeah.
So as you said, you ask a question, you ask them to say, anyone been here? And the ones that go, ooh, are the ones that want to talk.
Yeah.
And also by addressing the room and asking a question, it makes them more likely to answer rather than being singled out.
Definitely.
But what he didn't really do much of that. He would ask a question. So for example, if I'm saying, oh, Dominic, you're wearing a nice shirt, and then they walk away. But he didn't sort of like go into it. Oh, you're wearing a shirt. It reminds me of when I did this or that, or this happened.
Yeah,
oh my God. Yeah. And then you build something from it, and something funny will happen. And then, he didn't do much of that. And then he got scared and nervous, and he just carried on. But what he could have done maybe was when he was nervous and a bit off put, maybe get some fresh air, sit down for a bit, then come back in the room, then think of something. And if that doesn't work, go back, think of something. But what he did was he just and it just boom. And then what I noticed with the comedians on top of that, what they did was, I just need to get my material out. I'm not here to make you laugh.
Yeah.
But the whole point is you make them laugh. Like, if you're not making them laughing, even if you've written the best joke and they're not with you, it's not going to work. But a lot of them didn't see it like that. They just, as you said, looking through the notes. And it's a bit like, whenever you're performing, it's not about you. It's about the people watching.
Exactly. It's
No
about the
matter what
audience.
level, open mic, low, whatever, you should be doing it to make the people laugh and enjoy it, because it's the best feeling in the world when you perform on stage and you entertain them. If you're not doing it for that reason, why are you doing it?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I think it's a big responsibility to get on a microphone and talk, because you're demanding people's attention. And if people give you their attention, people are like, okay, I'm going to listen to you for the next, 5 minutes or 7 minutes, or 15 minutes or whatever it is. That's a huge responsibility. So, if you're going to get on the mic and you're not going to be prepared, or you're going to take out notes, or you're going to, not care about what the audience, whether or not the audience is engaged or not, yeah, I just think it's kind of a waste. It's just a waste, and it's also kind of insulting for the audience. Like, I've sat in so many comedy gigs, where there's been no respect shown to the audience, or there's been no engagement with the audience, and it's so hard. It's painful to be in there. You don't even really want to laugh, because you start to feel a little bit of contempt for the person on stage, because you're just like, you know what, you don't care about me, why should I care about you? And that's not that's not the type of vibe that you really want to have in the room. A really great room that I performed in earlier this year was the comedy versions in the Cavendish Arms. The MC there was so good, because what he did was he did a really clever thing of basically saying to the audience at the beginning of the show, this is going to be a great show. I'm going to get you really riled up. You're going to have an opportunity to scream and shout throughout the show. And everyone that goes on stage, even if they aren't that very good, you're still going to give them really big applaud and give them some support, and that's what happened. Like, everyone that went on stage got laughs because the material was good, but also when they were coming off stage, they got a big applaud. They got a big applaud when they were going on stage, when they're going off stage. And the MC, he did such a good job, because he gave the audience an opportunity to scream and shout. He'd be like, "Are you having a good time?" People would be like, "Yeah." He'd be like, "No, no, no, no. Are you having a good time?" Like, stuff like that. It's such a basic thing, but it's just checking in with the audience after each comic and having a little bit of buzz with the audience. Like, there's got to be a game, or there has to be, some sort of like through joke that happens, which is like, you have the comedians on stage doing their bit, and then you're on stage doing your bit as the MC. But then there's this other bit, which is the audience, and that's their thing. So it's like, maybe you do a Mexican wave, and you're like, okay, let's do the Mexican wave. Whoa! Oh, that was good over there. Oh, and you have this thing with them, and you do it, and you go back to it, and it's kind of like, you reward them, you give them encouragement. Yeah, you're a great audience. Or, oh yeah, oh, this side is getting better. This side is this side over here. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you're engaging, and
Yeah,
I
playing a
think
game.
without that game, whatever the game is, without the game, the audience is going to be flat, and they're going to be bored, and they're going to, in my experience, they're going to feel a little bit of contempt and a little bit of anger towards the night, because they didn't get to express themselves. They didn't feel listened to, and
Yeah.
they weren't respected. They really weren't respected. So that's why it's so important. I mean, I was talking to a venue recently, and I was saying, like, they were saying that they were going to be having this night, and I was like, yeah, that's great. Like, but you need an MC. Like, you need an MC for the night. And they were saying, well, we don't necessarily need one, because like the comedians can introduce each other and then we'll have music. And I was like, yeah, but no, you need an MC, because the MC brings the whole thing together and makes it into a night. Even if it's a quiet night in the beginning and you're not charging in, if someone goes out to that, they want to feel like it's a show, and they'll feel like it's a show if there's an MC. If there's no MC, it's very kind of flat. There's no there's no real start and end to it, and it's it's very casual, and it's, I don't know. I mean, it could just be anybody sitting in a room together, rather than it being a show.
Yeah.
I suppose it depends on the type of night that you want to create as well.
Yes, yes, of course. I think, yeah, of course. But I think it's yeah. You got. May I ask, what was the name of the MC? Because I probably know
Who? What MC?
for Cavendish. Was it Ross Smith?
Oh, it was a guy called Dave, I think. I think he said his wife owned the place.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Really, really good MC. I was very impressed. Probably one of the best MCs I've seen so far in London, I have to say. He was really, really good. I liked your bit. I liked your magic bit that you were doing. That's got potential, you know. I'd say you've probably built on that, have you?
Well, it's a bit sort of Tommy Cooperish, and like
Yeah, that's
I'm
good.
not I'm not Tommy Cooper, so it's not the one thing. It's just something that happened across. So there's a lot of other things that I'm building around it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's good. But that's good because that's a little game. That's a little thing, you know,
Yeah,
and that's what's good about it.
I do find that, yes, when I've done magic before at a gig or any time when I host or when I go on, when you do a bit of magic, it brings a bit of energy to the room.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely.
Yeah, I think one of it's a good thing that you mentioned that because one thing, the Comedy Shams is a great gig, good for new material, but the only thing bad about it is it goes on too long. And
Okay.
with a show, I think an hour or an hour and a half is the amount of time you should put on a show for. Because if it
Yeah,
goes past that point, comedians are tired and the
yeah.
audience are tired.
I think an hour is golden. If you can do an hour, that's
Yeah.
golden. You know, you give people like 3 minute set or a 4 minute set, and that's good material. Like if someone could go on stage and do 3 minutes of good material, like that's fast. And I mean, I love when the comedian gets off the stage and the audience is like they want more. They want more of that comedian. That's the best because you know if someone stays on stage for too long, if they do like a 7 minute set, for example, they might have like 4.5, 5 minutes of really good material, but maybe the last 2 minutes might lag. You
Mm.
know, they might get their high. They might get their high at 5 minutes. In another way, it'd be a cool idea, I think, to do a show where, you know, the MC judges by the laughter when that person's set is over. So, like, if someone gets a really big laugh, and that's that comedian, let's get him off. You know, let's get a round of applause. Okay, who do we have next? Okay, boom, someone comes up on stage. They do the bit. They do the bit. They do the bit. They get a really big laugh, and that's that person when we get them up. Do you know what I mean? And I think that could be like a pretty cool idea for a show because it would definitely keep the energy up, and it would yeah, it
Yeah.
would make people, I don't know, it would definitely make the comedians be on their toes, you know?
It's similar to a gong show. That that's gong shows are good, but they're bloody hard. And
Yeah,
depends on what type of comedian you are. If you're a straight one-liner kind of comic, then it's going to be difficult.
yeah.
And if you're not one of those, it's
If you're
as
not
you
if you're
said,
not a one liner,
yeah, like
yeah,
30 seconds or 10 seconds, you've got to have them.
yeah, yeah, I suppose. But if you did it by the laughs, then you know you wouldn't necessarily be capping them at a time. You'd be capping them at the laugh instead, you know?
It's an idea. Give it a go. See what happens.
I
I mean,
think
it
I
feels
will give it a
like
go.
trying
I
different
think I
things.
will give it a go. I'm gonna find a venue and start hosting a night pretty soon. Oh, I just need to plug my laptop in. Sorry,
Okay.
second. Yeah, I'm gonna find a venue and start hosting again quite soon. I think
Good.
it's time. It's time.
Oh,
It's all very well talking about these things, but what you really want to be doing is actually doing them. So
it's been a funny thing in a way because I found hosting easy to get back into because
yeah,
I just see hosting as like you're just chatting to people and interacting with them.
yeah,
Whilst when you're doing a set, I don't know, just something about it puts a bit more pressure on. It's
definitely.
like because I've not been doing it for 6 months, the first two gigs I've done, whoa, they were bloody hard. I had one of the hardest bombs I've had in a while on
Yeah,
Thursday. It's just, yeah, I felt it's just something, yeah, from the off. And I mean, it was good. So, like, I've recovered from about an hour later. and I
Yeah.
think of like what things I could have done.
Did you
Like I
record
didn't,
it?
I haven't yet listened to it, but I'm going to record it as well, and I'm going to
Did you
listen.
did you record the set that you bombed on? Did you film
Yeah,
it or?
yeah.
Yeah, nice, nice, nice.
And I want to take apart what went wrong. But yeah, I think one of the things I think you pointed out on is that in comedy and emceeing, a lot of the times, not with Mo, I think with a certain number, I think a lot of people don't consider the performing side of things, and there's a lot of sometimes, yeah, it's a basic thing. You should be happy to be on stage, and your job is to entertain. And but a lot of them don't often. People sometimes don't consider that. They're just thinking of, I'm gonna do this and that's it. There's not more to it than that.
Yeah, and I think, as well, it's this whole thing of like, if people go out to perform to do comedy as opposed to going out and getting paid to do comedy. Like if you're at a paid gig, it's a different feeling, If you're making money from it, if you're actually making money from the gig, then you're like, oh, I've got to make sure this is good stuff. I've got to make sure this is a material. Or if you're hosting and you've charged into a place and you're hosting and it's your show, you want to make sure that people have a good time, because it's gotta feel like they got value for their money. A, so they enjoy the show, but also B, so they tell their friends and they come back next week. You know, so that in that way, I think you have to be prepared to only get people on stage who are gonna fly that flag of professionalism, and do a good set, and not going to go on stage and take for granted those minutes that you've given them, because the more time you can get on stage as a comedian or as a performer, that's just worth its weight in gold. Because I mean, every time you're on stage, you're learning.
Well, it's an interesting point you mentioned there, because I noticed with magicians and other performing arts, they get maybe an hour on stage at a paid gig
Yeah,
or gig, but comedians maybe 20 minutes.
yeah, and I mean, they better be good 20 minutes. I know some comedians that do magic and stuff like that, as part of their set, and it really, really works, because the good thing about magic, as you say, is that you're creating this energy in the room. You're creating this energy. You can do jokes around it, or then if you do your set on the back of it, you've already got that energy there to play with. Something I've started doing, I mean, I've been doing it for a few years, is using music on stage. Like I play harmonica, and I like to do some harmonica in my act. And I find it's a great tool to create energy. As soon as I play some music, there's a bit of a buzz. It's like, oh, this is interesting. This is different, and you can work it into your jokes and everything. And it's just something. It's just another little element, It's like Steve Martin going on stage with the arrow in his head hat, It's just another little joke to have with the audience,
One thing that I want to lead into, so like we're talking about Spanish and about that little joke, and like New York. How did the Spanish take to you as a whole? What's the culture like over there as opposed to New York? How do the two cultures compare, and how do they compare with London?
Well, I haven't done that much comedy in London since I've been here, to be honest. Like I've only done a few. I did a few gigs in January and February, and then we went into the lockdown. So I haven't done that much here. And then prior to when I moved over here last year, the last time I did comedy in London was probably 2016, I think, when I was here for a few weeks. I did some gigs in London, and I did a gig in Manchester. But so I haven't done that much Spanish comedy here in London yet. I would like to do some. I think I probably will get into doing some. But the Spanish in New York, it was really well received. And I was in California 2 years ago. I toured California, and I did a lot of comedy in Spanish out there, and that was really well received as well. They loved it, actually. You know, they loved it because there's a lot of Mexicans in California, and yeah, a lot of South Americans in New York. There's a lot of Spanish speaking people in the States. You know, it's really is the second language over there. I'd say that, and probably Chinese or Vietnamese is probably one of the kind of, or even Korean as well. It's really, really widely spoken out in the States, you know. And I think when you can speak in another language in the States, you really are, you're talking to another part of America that isn't necessarily always talked to in a comedy set. But there are going to be people in the audience. Like I was doing a gig. I did an open mic in Hollywood at this place called Ha Ha Comedy Club. And, you know, went on stage. The room was full of comedians, right? It was a 7 p.m. show. I went on stage and, you know, I started off my set in Spanish. And I said, oh, alguien hablas español? And there was a guy in the audience and he was like, sí. And I was like, ¿dónde está? And he was like, Barcelona. And I was like, okay. And it was just cool, you know. It was like, he wasn't from Barcelona, but he spoke a bit of Spanish, and we had this little bit of banter, and then that created a bit of a buzz for the rest of my set, you know. Yeah, like, funny, when I got back from the States, I was doing a gig in Madrid at Teatro de los Aguas. I was doing a stand-up Euros gig, which they're not running them anymore, but there is still English comedy in Teatro de los Aguas. And I was doing a set, and I was talking about being in a taxi and talking to the driver in Spanish, you know. And then I got back to Madrid and I was doing my comedy set in English. So it's just the world that we live in, you know. You go overseas and you speak Spanish, you come back to Spain and you speak English, you know. It's like, it's a really big crossover, but it's kind of accepted now. Like, you know, you can do comedy in English in Madrid. It's totally accepted. There's enough of a scene there to support it, you know.
So on top of that, how many languages do you speak? So you can speak, what I gathered from what you said before, Irish, Gaelic, Spanish, and English.
A little bit of Gaelic. I wouldn't say I'm fluent, but I can definitely speak a little bit. I'm pretty near fluent in Spanish. I can speak basic French, like very basic French. I used to be much better at speaking it because I did my Erasmus in France when I was 19, but I kind of lost it because I wasn't really using it. But I still understand French. I can watch a film in French and understand it quite well, but speaking it would probably be a little bit less. And that's about it, really. I know a few words in German, but yeah, that's about it, really. And obviously the old English.
But how did you? So I can't understand you. Could you say that again? No. How did you find the process of learning Spanish, and how did you get fluent in it?
Hard. I mean, so when I went to Spain, I did French in school, and so when I went to Spain, my Spanish was terrible. I was putting on all these accents and all the words. I was speaking Spanish with a French accent, which is the wrong thing to do. And my girlfriend at the time, she actually studied Spanish when we were there. So she got really good at it. I still couldn't speak it. I mean, I knew how to speak restaurant Spanish and, like, you know, how to speak Spanish in a shop and stuff like that, but I couldn't really speak it at all. For the first probably 8 years I was there, which is just embarrassing, actually. And then what happened was we split up with her, and I started dating a girl from Mozambique.
Uh-huh.
And she didn't speak English. Her first language was actually Portuguese, but she spoke Spanish. So yeah, we just spoke in Spanish, but my Spanish was it was pretty minimal when I started dating her. And we dated for about 3 months, and in those 3 months, like, my Spanish just went right up, you know. And by the end of the time of dating her, I could speak Spanish pretty well, which was good, you know. It was it was a good thing that came out of that relationship. Yeah. I'm still friends with her, actually. I'm still friends with that girl. Nade is her name. We're still pretty good friends. So
This is bloody brilliant, mate, Dominic. Because I want to know, how did you go and approach her in a bar with like not knowing any Spanish? You say, "Senorita."
Do you know what happened, right? Do you know what happened? I split up with my ex, by the way, of 11 years. So it was a big relationship to come out of. I think I was on a night out. We were in this square called Plaza dos de Mayo, which is a really famous square in Madrid. Traditionally, what would happen is a lot of people would hang out there and play music and do botellón, which is where you can drink in the street. But more and more that's become illegal now, and now it's like totally illegal. But it used to be that the police would look the other way and you could drink in the street, and it would be a bit of a party atmosphere. Like people would just hang out in this little plaza, this little square, and just drink and play music like all night long. Like literally you'd hang out there. You wouldn't even go to the pub. You would literally get cans and just sit out, because it'd be so hot in Madrid. You could stay out all night. And so anyway, I was out with a friend of mine, and yeah, I just saw her like sitting on a wall. I was quite ballsy. I said to my friend, I said, "Oh, like I really like that girl," and he was like, "Are you gonna go talk to her?" And I was like, "Okay." So I went over to her, started talking to her in my broken Spanish, and she basically was kind of ignoring me and was like, not really interested. So then I started talking to her friend who spoke English. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, where he's from and everything." And so then she was kind of warming to me a bit more. And then I ended up just like walking with them. Like they were walking somewhere else. So me, my friend, her friend, and her, we all just went for this walk, kind of like around the city. And I was talking to her friend, and then I was kind of talking to her as well. But I was talking to her friend in English, and then I was talking to her a little bit in my Spanish. And then at the end of it, like they were going one way and we were going the other, and I just was like, "Hey, can I get your number?" And she was like, "Oh, okay." So she gave me her number, and we we met up, and had our first date about a week later. And that date was probably the funniest thing in the world, because yeah, like she spoke a little bit of English, but like very little, and my Spanish was just like zero, So we somehow communicated, and yeah, just kind of went from there. It was quite a cool little relationship, actually. Yeah, it was really, really good. It's a really good time.
How did you build up to it? Did you just go and Google Translate or something over text, and then boom?
I used to use Google Translate for our text messages. Yeah, I used to use Google Translate for our text messages, and then once we started seeing each other, it was a physical relationship. So the words came when they needed to come, and otherwise we were just hanging out.
Hey.
It's a good time. She is a dancer, and I am also a dancer at heart. I mean, I love to dance, and I've been dancing for years.
Oh.
So yeah, like I'm probably a bit of a closet dancer in a way. I've taken some ballet classes and stuff like that, and I'm not a professional dancer by any means, but I do love to dance. And so, yeah, me and her, like, we would just go out and we would go dancing, and we would dance the night away together. It was fantastic time,
Oh.
Yeah. So that was a really good, really, really good, really, really good time. But she was so patient with me, because her Spanish was really, really good. But oftentimes we'd be talking, and she would say something, and I would be like, "Oh, no entiendo esa palabra. I don't understand that word." And then she'd say, "Oh, that's because it's Portuguese." And I'd be like, "Oh, okay." So she would speak to me in Portuguese, and I'd be like, "Oh, what are you saying?" She'd be like, "Oh, I'm speaking Portuguese." Like, oh, okay. So I was probably learning a bit of Portuguese as well without even knowing it,
Well, they're both very similar languages, aren't they? I hear, because one of them says if they learn the other one, they often learn the other.
Yeah, I mean, she said that she picked up Spanish like really quickly just from knowing Portuguese. I mean, her Spanish, like, people always said to her, "Oh, your Spanish is so good. Like, where are you from?" And she'd be like, "Oh, I'm from Mozambique, but I just know it because I know Portuguese." I don't know, if ever I hear Portuguese, I can always recognize it and stuff. I'm like, "Oh yeah, Portuguese." And then sometimes I say to people, "Ah, Portuguese," and then they're like, "Yeah," and then they're like, "Oh, habla portugués," or what? I don't even know how you say, "Do you speak Portuguese?" But it's something like that, and I'll be like, "No, hablo español, pero no hablo portugués." But I can kind of like, talk a little bit. I think it's a little bit like Italian as well. Whenever I hear Italian speaking, I can kind of understand them because I speak Spanish. But there's a lot of false friends as well, where there's words that sound like one thing but actually mean something else. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't speak Italian, but I can understand it kind of because I speak Spanish. Yeah.
It's quite funny you've mentioned that you speak languages, because I remember going to Dublin and one of the guys told me that the whole Irish law is written in Gaelic Irish, and there was a loophole in that law that allowed that, and then they just took drugs for a whole day or something ridiculous.
Really? Oh, I didn't hear about that, but yeah, it's definitely. I mean, Gaelic is they're keeping Gaelic alive in Ireland. Like there's a big movement to keep it alive. There's parts of Ireland, the Gaeltacht, where they only speak Gaelic, and I think it's really important. I think it's really, really important that it is kept alive because, excuse me, it's our national language, and it's originally originally Gaelic. We originally spoke Gaelic before we were invaded, by Britain.
Yeah. But the Welsh, man, they've really kept it fantastic, haven't they?
They've kept it going. They've kept it going really well as well. Yeah, definitely. Good for them. And then you got the Manx as well. Manx on the Isle of Man. That's still going as well, I believe.
Yeah, and then you've got the French as well, Breton.
Yeah, what is that one?
I don't know. I remember I read some book on like Gaelic languages and that came up.
Really? Okay, I didn't know about that. And then you've also got the Corsican.
Yeah.
As well. But your surname is McCarthy. Is that Scottish or is that Irish?
So the Scottish way is MA, but the Irish way is MC. Yeah. So I am the Irish way.
So your family Irish?
My dad is English and Irish.
That's
so
cool.
so my dad's from Liverpool.
Yeah.
My grandmum was from English Liverpudlian.
Yeah.
But my grandfather was a first generation sort of second generation. How would you say? Whatever. He was born in Liverpool, but his dad was Irish.
Oh wow. Okay. Cool. Do you know what part?
McCarthy's are from Cork, I think. I'm not sure.
Cork.
I don't know. I don't know what region, but I know isn't there a part of Ireland where there's a lot of McCarthy's?
There is, yeah, definitely. But there's McCarthy's all over Ireland as well,
I've not met many McCarthy's. I've spoken to one or two, and I said, "Oh, I'm McCarthy," and they're like, "So what?" And then I had an Uber driver who had the same name as me, and then but in LA.
Oh, brilliant.
Marvin. I said, "Oh, Marvins are cool," and he said, "Yeah, you're right, Marvin." And it's some Spanish American, and yeah, it was fun. To be honest, I've got a thing for Spanish women. I think they're gorgeous.
Hey, well, you gotta meet some then and date them, I guess.
That sounds
Spanish women are awesome. I mean, the personalities of Spanish women are absolutely beautiful as well.
What do you mean by that?
I just mean that Spanish people are just lovely people. They're so warm, so warm-hearted, so open. Like their personalities are so open and just like, yeah, they're just very loving, very nice people, very good people. Spanish people are very, very good, very good. It's such a warm country, I think, yeah. I mean, I've only ever had positive experiences with Spanish people, only ever had positive. And I lived there for 15 years.
Bloody hell. That's why the English keep moving over there.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the weather is one thing, but of course it's also just it's the energy there. It's the vibration there is high, It's good feeling when you're there. The food is good. The party is good. The feeling there. The people are just so warm and friendly.
So going on to that, so you love Spanish and you've had all these different experiences and acting. So what are you more sort of passionate about? Are you more passionate about performing or behind the camera? and what are you looking to do after Corona finishes? And also, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Ha ha ha. No.
It's a great question. These are great questions. Yeah, so yeah, I've been really lucky. Like I feel really fortunate actually, because any time I've ever kind of decided to pursue something, you know, in the arts, I've been lucky in that I've been able to make things happen. I've been lucky in that I've been able to collaborate with people to bring projects to life. And you know, when I kind of was done with theater acting and started to focus on film acting, I was lucky in that I got some parts in some short films, and then went on to produce some short films myself, and even direct a music video for a friend's band. So that was good fun. And then I don't know. In 5 years' time, I definitely see myself still acting, but probably working in production as well. And like the last 5 years, I've been kind of moving more and more into production. I mean, I'm just recently been working on a proof of concept trailer for a sci-fi drama, and that we shot that up in Yorkshire. So that was really cool, and I was directing that. I wasn't acting in it, and I also produced it with my production company called Cosmic Travel Productions. But that was a really cool project to be involved in because we had a budget, so we were able to like pay for locations, pay for catering, pay for equipment, and we got the actors involved on the basis of, you know, we're going to give you a credit, and if we get funding to make the pilot, we will, you know, basically speak with the casting director, and you'll be able to get an audition to see if you actually can be involved in the pilot episode, you know. Sorry, I've just got a frog in my throat now.
What's going on, man? You all right? What's the cough?
I don't know. Hopefully I'm okay.
It's not what I think it is it?
I hope not. And yeah, so I don't know, I've been really fortunate. Like I love working in production. I love making stuff. I mean, as a filmmaker, that's something I'm really passionate about, and I love producing things and bringing things to life. This project that we just did was so cool because we had the budget, we were able to get really good equipment, and you know, I put together a really professional crew. So yeah, really happy with what we've made. We're in post-production at the moment on it, but the initial rough cuts, like, they look so good. They look so good. I mean, I can see this show, you know, on Netflix or Amazon or Channel 4 or BBC, something like that. It has that potential. The script is very good. It would be a 10 episode TV show. And yeah, I'm gonna do my best to make sure that we get funding to make it happen, you know, to make it happen. I've been really lucky. Like, I've met, in the years that I've been involved in film and production, I've met a lot of really cool people. I've met a lot of connected people who are doing stuff out in LA, in New York, in the UK. So I've been lucky that I've met kind of the right people along the way, and I've been able to just take things to the next stage, where they get the attention that they need. You know, like my first feature film that I made in 2018. That's now out. That's now coming out. It's coming out in the UK in November, but it's already out in the States on Amazon and on Apple TV, on Google Play, on YouTube. The funny thing is that it's one of the most torrented movies at the moment. There's so many illegal torrents of it online, which is it's an indie film, but I don't know, somehow they got a copy of the film. And if you go on Reddit, it's been posted like 25 times or something on Reddit. So but in a way that's kind of cool, because it's meaning that it's getting a lot of the trailer's getting a lot of hits, and we're starting to get some good reviews on Amazon and on IMDb. We're actually at 7.5 out of 10 on IMDb, which is pretty good for an indie film, you know. So. Yeah, so that's called 36 Husbands, and it's coming out on, I think, November 9th in the UK. It'll be out probably on Amazon. It's already out on Amazon in the States. And that's really cool. Like, I mean, I made that 2 years ago. I was an actor in it, and I was also involved in the production. I did I did some of the boom, some of the sound on it, and I also did catering on it. That was really cool to work on a feature film and work on the production side of it, as well as acting in it. And it was a really big learning curve in that. I learned so much about production, and I also learned that I wanted to make films, that I wanted to be a filmmaker as well, you know. So 5 years time, definitely working in production, hopefully producing, hopefully directing, and yeah, definitely acting in something as well. I'll probably start doing TV here pretty soon, I think. It's on the vision board. Do you use a vision board, Marvin?
Okay, I do, but I'm not. I need to. I'm making some changes to what I'm doing with it at the moment.
Yeah.
But yes, I do.
Nice. Yeah. So it's on my vision board. I've got my got some stuff on there, and the radio hosting thing just kind of came from nowhere. Like, I've always wanted to work on the radio, and yeah, I had it on the vision board for a good while. You know, when I came to London, I put out a lot of emails. I emailed like BBC, you know, ITV, a lot of other radio stations like Virgin, what's that station?
Media.
Radio X.
Okay.
It's called Radio X. I emailed loads of places and I got like no replies, you know? And I was like, okay, that's fine. And then I was like, went about my business. I've been working for Emirates Stadium as a cashier at a restaurant, working in events, working as bar staff, working as a waiter, you know, all these kind of sideline gigs to pay the rent. And then, yeah, just out of the blue, got an email from Relaks Radio, and they were like, "Oh yeah, are you still interested in the work?" And I said, "Yeah, definitely." So now I'm doing an internship with them, and it's fantastic. Like, I've already done 6 shows, interviewed 6 people. I'm on air like twice a week. I'm doing this 3-month internship with the promise of a job at the end. So, I mean, I'm still kind of pinching myself over that, you know, like I'm going to be on.
You're working for the radio, did you say?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Nice. Don't really know. I quite know how it's happened, but yeah. So I'm doing an internship initially for 3 months. So I've 3 weeks done, but they've said at the end of the 3 months that they'll offer me a job. So yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And that's London. That's what I love about London. There's so many opportunities here to kind of to do what you want to do if you're prepared to hustle and put the work in, you know?
Yeah. That's the good thing about the West. What's it called? There are sort of 3 more questions I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
And I'm going to head off. I've got another interview around 1 o'clock. But yeah, just 3 questions.
No worries.
Who is your hero? And what is a quote you'd like to live your life by? And what advice would you give to your younger self?
Okay, these are great questions. Great questions. Okay, so who's my hero? I would say my hero in comedy is probably Billy Connolly. Yeah, he was probably the first comedian that I just kind of discovered as a child. And yeah, I think he was the first comedian that I actually wet myself. Like, I actually pissed my pants laughing at when I was a child. Yeah, so he's definitely my hero. And I think he's done so much for comedy and so much for the art of storytelling in comedy, which is something I'm really interested in as a storyteller. So yeah, he would definitely be my hero. What was your other questions?
What is a quote you'd like to live your life by, and what advice would you give to your younger self?
Okay, so quote that I live my life by is definitely Oscar Wilde. Life is too important to be taken seriously, and I think that's a great quote because when things are really, really hard and really, really difficult, I think it's great to be able to laugh at it, life, and great to be able to go out and do some comedy, you know? That's why I love comedy, because I think life is hard most of the time, but, you know, you got to take the rough with the smooth, and you got to be able to go out and just have a laugh and just find the funny in the tragedy. I think that's pretty much how I live my life, how I've always lived my life, and how I think I always will live my life. Advice to my younger self would probably be, don't take things so personally. You know, yeah, don't take things so personally and keep going. It gets better. You know, I think when I was younger, I struggled a lot, especially growing up in Ireland. It was quite a rough upbringing in Dublin. Just Dublin was quite a rough place to grow up in the 90s, the 80s. I was a teenager in the 90s, and it's quite a rough place to grow up. But I don't know, like, I mean, no regrets. Probably made me who I am today. But I think I would have loved to have said to my kind of 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old self, don't worry, it's going to get easier. Like, you know, it's going to get better, and keep going and stuff like that. Because, yeah, it was just difficult time. I used to have long hair. So I was known as the smelly rocker.
Oh,
but then it was okay because the Prodigy came out, and Keith changed everything. So I'll always be grateful to Keith for that.
Keith.
Keith, give it up for Keith.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much, Dominic.
Thanks a million. That was great.
Do you have anything you would like to plug?
Anything I'd like to plug? Definitely want to plug some stuff. Yeah, got a children's book out at the moment. It's called The Secret Words, and it's a empowering book for children to learn about the importance of self-confidence and belief in themselves. So it's called The Secret Words. It's available on Amazon, amazon.co.uk. It's also available on the Book Depository. It's also available just online. I've also got 36 Husbands, which is coming out in November on Amazon, on Apple, on Google Play, on YouTube Movies. So that's an indie feature film, comedy, also family friendly, uplifting, feel good comedy. Yeah, that's pretty much my two things. And Relaks Radio, if you want to listen to me on Relaks Radio, I've got a show called The Art and Spirituality Show, which is on Monday and Wednesdays from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m, where I interview artists, comedians, actors, writers, teachers, people working in mindfulness. And that's on Relaks. It's on the Relaks Radio app, which is Relaks, RELAKS. Radio, and you can get the app. You can just listen to it directly there. We'll also go Facebook Live as well if you want to catch us on the video. And yeah, I think that's basically it.
Cool. Well, just send me the links in the message, and yeah, take care, Dom, and I will see you soon. That's been Dominic Anglim. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had some fun. And please, as again, like the podcast, give it a review on iTunes, and share it to your friends. See you soon.